Hello, my name is Garret Cornett with the Michael Simonson Foundation. Today I'm talking with Loria Ryan, who's been working with Michael for about 4 years now. Loria went from being a longtime AA member, living in fear of alcohol and relying on pharmaceuticals to deal with her pain, to taking control of her life by becoming aware of her thoughts and her energies. Coming up, we'll talk about her journey with Michael from fear to freedom. To begin, Loria, tell me a little bit about yourself. What was your life like prior to meeting Michael?
I spent my whole life up to about 4 years ago um, being afraid of everything, living in fear, being depressed, feeling sorry for myself, being a victim of life and its circumstances.
How were you dealing with those fears at that time?
I had spent 20 something years in and out of therapy. I've been medicated for most of those years on a combination of antidepressants and anxiety medications. I had most recently been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, lots of physical pain that I now realize was a manifestation of this fear and this anger and this depression.
How has your life changed since you started working with Michael?
Since working with Michael, I have gotten off of all the medication, all the psychiatric medications. I think I was on 2 antidepressants, a mood stabilizer, anti-anxiety medication, and a sleeping pill. That's 5. And that was just 2 years ago. I was also on a host of pain medications, anti-inflammatories, nerve pain medications. My second workshop that I went to with Michael, I arrived from California walking with a cane. When I left that workshop 5 days later, I wasn't using the cane any longer.
Wow, that's a powerful change.
And it's about realizing what playing those fears, what the anxiety, the depression, all of that habitual thinking over and over again, how I have stored that in my body. I realize now that I have the power to be strong and healthy.
How would you describe that experience, going from being dependent upon pharmaceuticals to not using them at all?
I was very afraid of stopping the medication. I was on it for more than 20 years. And using the tools that Michael has taught me, I was able to just keep right on walking right through that. And I am a happy lady. I'm not depressed. Yes, sometimes I feel sorry for myself because that's my habit. But I don't have to rely on those pharmaceuticals anymore. And it's mind-blowingly awesome and wonderful that I don't have to be stuck in that rut anymore.
How did you hear about Michael Simonson?
I have a friend, a very good friend, and I call her my sister from another mother. She was having some experiences in her life with her son, and she kept telling me to come to Michael's workshops. And my children were grown, and I didn't understand why I needed to go to a workshop led by a man who worked with exceptionally energetically sensitive children. She's like, come on, come on. And so finally I said, okay, I will.
How would you describe your first workshop experience?
This sounds like a cliche, but it changed my life. It literally changed how I thought about everything. It challenged how I had thought for 50-something years about my life and my circumstances and the people in my life and how I reacted and related with those people.
What did you learn from that first workshop?
The biggest thing that really caught my attention was that Michael is not a guru. Michael said, don't believe anything I say. Go out there and figure it out for yourself. And that was huge to me, because I've been exploring life and situations and workshops and retreats and stuff for many years, always looking for that somebody, something to follow. And I followed many. So when he said that, I was like, what?
Yes. One of the main principles Michael teaches is to go inside and find your own truth.
And it was one of my first experiences with this knowing that it was a truth that he was talking about. The biggest awakening I think that I had was that.
What is another realization you had at the workshop?
So the next thing that I remember was him talking about fear and how fear rules our experience. Talk about me, rules my experience. And I could see that a little bit, but I had some exploring to do. I had to go away and figure that one out for myself. I had to find out exactly how much fear I was living in, because I had this thought that you take the fear by the hand and you do it anyways. I didn't realize it was still underneath, ruling everything and making my choices for me. I was a puppet to that fear.
Can you give me a specific example of a change that you made in your life once you realized that you had been living in fear?
Absolutely. I realized that fear ran very deeply in my life. I identified myself as an alcoholic when I was 30 years old. And I joined AA. And I began to realize that fear is what rules AA. It started out with a great intent, but the whole tenet of AA is that to be afraid of drinking. What will happen if I drink? If I drink, I'll die. If I don't do this, that, and the other thing, then something bad's going to happen.
How did you overcome that fear-based mentality?
So I actually left AA after 23 and something years. And as a result, I'm no longer in fear of alcohol. I'm no longer in fear of what people think about me. I was very entrenched in what the people in AA thought about me. Very entrenched. I wanted to fit in so hard. And I don't fear that anymore. I actually realize that I am a really cool human being, whether I am in AA or whether I have a drink or whether I don't. And I had just centered my whole life around that. And then to really look at it and see that it was just all based in fear. It's really eye-opening, very, very, very life-changing for me.
What other shifts have you experienced by addressing your fears?
Talking about the fear of being myself, I have had some really big shifts in my personal familial relationships. For example, my relationship with my daughter had been strained throughout the years, and I was just in fear all the time of losing her, of what she thought about me, what other people thought about me as a mother. And when I began to speak my truth to my daughter, and I began to release and celebrate and transmute these fears and move on with my life, specifically leaving the fear of AA behind, I've noticed that the communication has opened up with my daughter. We're building a relationship of my dreams that I always wanted to have with her, but I didn't know how to get there. And interestingly, that in moving away from fear and stepping into love and having the courage to say those things and speak my truth, that's changing. And it's just happening in a very natural way. It's very cool.
And what have you learned from this process?
I learned that I am the master of my life, not my ex-husband, not my ancestors, not the people that live across the hall. It's my truth that matters to me.
How has that realization that you are the master of your life affected you personally?
When I brought that home in my head and in my heart, when I brought that home and I started thinking about it, it just rang true right down to the cells of my body. And I just started believing in that instead.
You started believing in yourself. How does that feel?
It's amazing.
Based on what you've learned through working with Michael, how would you describe that process of transitioning from fear to love?
I started to realize that it's none of my business what other people think of me. I was ruled by the fear of what other people thought about me and how they judged me. And I began to realize that that wasn't true, that they didn't have control over me. That was only the fear of that. So then I started to realize I could be my real self. I could be my true self without having to try to please everybody, trying to fit in, trying to say the right thing, trying to do the right thing, at the expense of my truth. Huge change for me. Huge.
What are some of the tools Michael gave you to address your fears?
That, that I love you source exercise we do. I remind myself that I am an aspect of source. I am source. I am Loria. I love you, Loria.
Yeah, I do the same thing. The I love you source tool. When you say I love you source or I love you God in your head before you talk to anyone, or even when you think about anyone, whether it's someone you're passing on the street or someone you've known your entire life, it's one of the most powerful ways to reinforce that we are all one, to come from a loving place.
I often use something very similar to that as I walk. I'm a daily walker to keep my body moving properly. And with every breath that I take, with every step that I take, I'm bringing my love and my light into the cells of my body, and I'm getting strong and I'm getting healthy.
How has using these tools shifted your perspective?
It all boils down to believing in who I am, believing in myself. I've had to really look at how I think. I've had to really look at my habitual thinking patterns, my patterns of speaking, my patterns of doing. For example, I want to fix things. I had to look at that because I realized that needing and wanting to fix things was all based on fear of losing people. So changing the thinking has been the most significant process in that. And instead of, as I have done in the past, rehashing over and over the same story, talking about the same fear over and over again, instead of that, using this tool of releasing and celebrating and transmuting the fear and speaking the truth, that It sounds really simple, but it is simple. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. What would you say is the greatest gift Michael has given you?
I think the greatest gift that Michael has given to me is the understanding that I'm learning that we're all one, that we're all connected energetically, genetically. We're connected through our fears. We're connected through love. And I've also come to understand that coming from a place of love is actually easier than all of the stuff that I was putting on for all of those years trying to get through. Excuse me. So this concept, we're all one, we're all connected. We're all human beings out here doing the best we can do. And celebrating those things, acknowledging the growth, acknowledging the change, acknowledging the life experiences that have brought me to where I am today. It's amazing.
What is it about Michael that makes him such an effective teacher?
Michael's a very interesting dude. He is a very effective teacher. He is very honest. He's very knowledgeable. He's very clear. His words are simple in that the concept is there. And he doesn't change the story. The story is the same story. And he just teaches me through my own experiences about this interconnectedness and about this concept of I create my reality with the thoughts that I empower. What does that actually mean for me in my life? And he helps me see that.
How does he help you see what's really going on within you?
It's like a little arrow. It goes zoom right into the truth of the matter. It's really cool. He challenges me to explore what's really going on. He challenges me to get beyond the surface of this, the facade that I have kept up here all of these years of based in fear. But he challenges me to get beyond this wall. He challenges me to get beyond being a hypocrite. He challenges me to be the truth of who I am. And I accept that challenge. It's very exciting.
Have you ever been angry with Michael for something he's presented to you?
Boy, I've judged him and I've cursed him at moments also, because it's a hard truth sometimes to look at what that facade really is.
What have you learned from looking at that facade, as you say?
I've learned that we're all connected. I've learned that we all have these fears. I've learned that the energy of these fears is what keeps me trapped by them. And so by learning how to do some energetic exercises, I learned that I don't have to hold on to that I can actually transmute that fear. And that instead of thinking about it habitually over and over again, I can just transmute it and move on. It's really cool.
So Michael is not afraid to push your buttons, so to speak, to get you to face your fears, confront your insecurities.
Absolutely not. I've seen many therapists, and I've talked to many group leaders and workshop leaders and guru types of people in my life, and so often it's just different because he confronts those thoughts. He gives me the courage to look at what's real by showing me, and going to workshops with other people shows me that other people are doing the same thing.
Now that you've participated in several of Michael's workshops, what is that experience like for you?
Very intense environment. It's a very safe place to come and to experience this breaking down of my walls, so to speak, to look at the truth of who I am while other people are doing the same thing. And it's a really amazing opportunity to see this concept that we're all one and we're all connected and we're all linked and we all have all of these similar fears and walls. The workshop environment gives me an opportunity to see that playing out with other people as well as with myself. And I learned through watching other people's experiences, and I just get another whole level of perspective of the truth and what it really truly means to be a puppet to my fears, and to be able to face those and transmute them so that I can live in my truth.
Can you give an example of how you've seen Michael's work positively impact someone else?
The most significant changes that I've seen in someone else was a young man that I knew who was 5 years old, having a really, really hard time in the world, on a whole cocktail of medications, and having a hard time in school and in life, and watching him transform, watching him become the truth of who he is by working with Michael. And watching how Michael worked with him and his family, and seeing the changes in the dynamics, and instead of that facade that I watched for so long and that I participated in my own life for so long, I get to see that changing from how they operated out of a place of fear into how they operate out of a place of love, and how they're able to confront the situations in life from that perspective instead of becoming a victim of the circumstances, how they've been able to grow and change.
What kind of changes did you witness?
I witnessed a little boy who could not regulate himself in any way become a young man who is courageous and forthright and honest, and who can actually participate. He could not even participate in school. He participates in school. He's doing well in school. He's learning, he's growing, he's changing. And I saw his family change from an environment of fear and dysfunction, for lack of a better term, into one that's real. Like all of that hypocritical, all of that hiding the truth from everybody disappeared. It didn't just disappear. I know they've worked hard on it.
From your perspective, how would you describe what Michael teaches?
Michael teaches about love and about truth. Michael teaches about how we are all one, how we're connected. I have learned about creating my life from my truth, from a place of love that I never understood before. Kind of, he has a way of washing away all the exterior stuff and helping me see what is the truth of who I am.
You know, Loria, I've witnessed part of your journey, and just in the last couple of years that I've known you, I've seen you make incredible changes in your life and your growth. And when I interview people about Michael's work, your story is the one that comes up the most. So you've inspired a lot of people.
The changes that have happened, that I've made, that I've worked for, coming into my power and being a master of my life. It's the coolest thing ever.
So if you could go back 10 years, say, with the understanding that you had now, what advice would you give to yourself back then?
That I create my reality with the thoughts that I empower and that I am a master of my life. I don't need other people to tell me how to live or how to be or how to tie my shoes. I would tell myself that I'm a very cool lady and I am a loving person. I do not have to be ruled by my fears. That's what I tell myself today.
Is there anything else you would like to share?
My heart is full of celebration and gratitude for the stuff that Michael's helped me walk through. I guess I just want to say how grateful I am to my friend who kept saying, come on, come to one of Michael's workshops. Come on, come to one of Michael's workshops. Let's make this work.
In summary, how would you describe your journey working with Michael?
Those couple of words I've said a couple times in this life-changing thing, literally, it has changed my life. And it's not something I have to memorize. It's not books I have to read. I don't have to hear it on tape. It's about learning to love who I am.
Beautifully said. Well, thank you, Loria, for taking time to share your story with me.
Thanks, Garret. I'm glad you asked.